Hey everyone, welcome to Game On Podcast number 39. Today we're talking about Star Renegades and Hot Shot Racing. We're also going to be talking about a PS5 reveal event with a bunch of totally, definitely interesting news and hot takes and everything else that comes with that. I'm one of your hosts, Andy, aka Solid Talker, here with the other one of the hosts.
Oh no, I'm setting this one out. You're gonna
Okay.
monologue this entire episode. No, I'm Brent Arcadia.
Oh, I was just going to do your voice, so it's fine.
Next episode, we're doing that.
And let's jump right into some PS5 news, Brent. Why don't you tell us what happened? You've owned a PlayStation before.
Oh yeah, I've owned every PlayStation, so I think I know what I'm talking about when I talk about the thing I watched today.
Did you own the Xperia Play?
That doesn't count.
That's the only one that I've owned in the last 20 years.
Well, that's so zero. Okay,
Yeah,
we're moving on.
none.
Yeah, no. Not to toot my own horn, but I even bought a fucking PSP and a Vita, so
Ooh, both.
So I want my money back. No, yeah, we had the not the reveal event, but the sort of debutante's ball of the PlayStation reveal ceremonies throughout the entire summer. Today they finally announced the pricing. They announced after the show what the actual release games were gonna be. But you got the first look at quite a few games, and yeah, they had a good showing. They had a lot of good looking games, but I also have a lot of qualms to pick. Whatever.
Yeah,
with
no,
the show
that's
itself.
probably right.
But why don't we go over like the main news? We had a few really interesting game announces that include Final Fantasy 16 and the Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy game that has been, leaked about 1,000 times. But what were your impressions of the two games?
Now, is this when was the last time they had a lock on a Final Fantasy game?
Added a lock on.
Oh, like when was the last time they had exclusivity even timed for a Final Fantasy game?
7 Remake this year?
Oh, yes, okay. Other than 7 Remake.
Let's see, 12, 13, it wasn't. So 12 was on PS2, so it's been 4 games.
Okay.
14, I guess, still hasn't come to Xbox consoles, so it still has that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. That looked cool. That looked like fun. I mean, it's been so long since I've played a Final Fantasy game that, like, what Final Fantasy means in my head is not at all related to what Final Fantasy has been for the last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes at a really interesting time because, like, all I expected out of this was pricing news, really. And so, in that sense, like, the whole show exceeded my expectations. But also, when all you want to see is, the price for a console that should have been announced 4 months ago, and you're getting, like, a game that you've highly anticipated for a few years now, it was like really jarring for me. Like I didn't get excited about it, and that makes me really sad. I don't know if it was the contents of the trailer itself or just the fact that I literally just wanted to see a 3-digit number on a screen and I got Final Fantasy 16 and I'm still reeling from it, because that's kind of how I felt when they announced the Series X at the Game Awards last year. It was just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna watch the Game Awards, it's gonna be some cool game trailers, and it opened with the Series X announced, and I was like, huh, it's gonna take me a while to process that.
Well, it's also, can we just, because we didn't talk about this with the Xbox thing, really, like, we're months out from this. These things are happening this year. It feels like this is the kind of information that should have been given to us earlier this year or last year.
Yes.
For maybe not necessarily like exact guarantees of release games, but at least like, here are some of the big tent poles, here's pricing, here are the models that are going to exist.
And
it just feels, everything feels so weird because of that.
Right. And I think that's why this was such a jarring announce, because they didn't announce any period of time when this game was coming out. So we as viewers sort of come into the show thinking like, oh, we're gonna hear about is, the price of the console, the games that are coming out on launch date, and the price of the games. And out of those three, we only got like the price of the console, and everything else was just like the normal sort of Sony E3 experience. Because yeah, the Final Fantasy game's not coming out. There was literally not even a year announced in the trailer.
Just that we are making one. It is
Yeah.
going to happen.
It's
Confirmed.
coming out. It's a timed exclusive. And please look forward to it. But that's how they led the show, so it set like a really weird tone for the show for me.
How did the other trailers jump at you? Were there any that jumped out at you really strongly that evoked some important feelings in you?
Well, I think so. Out of the new games that were announced, like I think Hogwarts Legacy, could be really interesting. I don't. Did that strike you as interesting at all?
I like the idea of the shift in time period.
Yeah.
That could be cool. I don't have enough of a connection to the Harry Potter universe to have the reaction I think it was supposed to get from me. Like, I have nothing against Harry Potter. I've enjoyed the books that I've read, but I'm not whatever the right collective noun is for people who like Potter. I don't know what that is.
Potter fans.
Potter, yeah, Pafan. I'm not a dyed in the wool Pafan, so it looks cool. I'll probably never play it.
Yeah, I think I am interested in it, but because it's been leaked several times and I still don't know what to expect from it, it also sort of didn't have that resonance. And again, I think a lot of this is because I didn't expect any of this information today. I literally just thought
your brain wasn't ready to handle any of this.
So what I felt like I got today wasn't anything new or interesting. Like, I'm really excited this game exists and is happening, and I hope they realize on every one of their visions, but I don't think they showed anything today that made me sit up and be like, oh my god, that's the game of the generation coming out.
You didn't feel that way about God of War Ragnarok?
Oh, see now there that was just a logo teaser.
Well, yeah,
because of course, but that definitely stands a chance of being the game of the generation. I mean, if I can't say anything definitively, but if you asked me right now what my game of this console generation was, it was God of War.
Wow. Well, shame that it didn't win Game of the Year.
Yeah, well, didn't come out last year.
Well, that's just, if it had been Game of the Generation, it could have overcome those obstacles.
Yeah. Game off generational divide episode. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
What
what
about the new Abe's Odyssey game? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, fucking come on. That was the part of the show where I was like, I guess it's bathroom time.
Well, so the new Five Nights at Freddy's didn't get you either?
Wasn't that not what Five Nights at Freddy's? I don't even know what this game is. I just know that my brother has a T-shirt for it, and I asked him what the game was, and he said I'd never played it, and I was like, okay. That's all I know about Five Nights at Freddy's. Please tell me you know something more.
I know it's spooky. I know that creepy bears at night come and jump in your face and go blah. And I know that there have been a variety of different attempts to evolve the game. I think he tried to make an RPG at one point, and then it didn't meet expectations, so he gave everyone their money back.
Spooky RPG? Is this all just one guy? Is this Freddy?
I believe it started off as one guy who made like a educational children's game, and then reused some of the creepy the assets which people said looked creepy to make a horror game. And then, obviously made millions and millions and millions of dollars off of this thing. And from, people on, at the time, YouTube, having really shouty reactions to the game.
Oh, man. Oh, God, maybe we should make a brief aside about the Ubisoft Forward last week, where every game they showed was just YouTubers screaming about something completely uninteresting.
Right, yeah. That Ubisoft Forward.
Forgot that happened already.
Totally I did. About that. And did you know, because for people who aren't aware, that Yves Guillemot, I'm totally butchering that, but I'm doing my best, issued they had a pre-recorded statement that they couldn't, in the month that they had to work on it, find a way to work into their hour-long segment of time to address the fact that there's been systematic abuse that's been ignored and tolerated at Ubisoft for quite some time. And so he tried to, address that by saying like, "Oh man, that sucks." But people didn't have it.
I wouldn't want to be abused.
Thankfully, it'll never happen to him. Because they'd jump on that real quick if it was him. But they promised that in the VOD version of the thing that they would put that separate video at the and they never did.
Yeah,
The VOD version still doesn't have his thing, his 2-minute apology or non-apology that they couldn't find a way to work into the actual thing, rather than showing extensive footage of a very mediocre looking Prince of Persia remake.
Yeah, boy did it. Yeah, I think not to derail from a totally serious topic, but like back to like the PlayStation thing. It's like there's such an aversion to putting any sort of information that might be at all, not positive to the brand into these showings, because they know that like fucking God knows how many 15 million, let's say, are watching this, and on video on demand there's maybe like 800,000. Because a big thing that happened was like a tremendous amount of information came out right after the Sony conference about like how nothing was clearly stated that there was a release date in the entire conference.
And weren't most of the games, or all of them, like it wasn't clear which were actually on release of the console and which were coming after?
Exactly. So it like not until after did anyone find out that the Spider-Man Miles Morales and Demon's Souls were coming at launch. And it seems crazy because those two are highly sought after and popular game franchises.
I saw more people talking about Demon's Souls than I did most of those other games.
Yeah. Demon's Souls was the best looking game of the showcase as far as I'm concerned, but
I'm excited that people are going to get a chance to play it. I mean, I won't because I don't have a PlayStation. But although I don't know if that was one of the ones that was like, oh, it's a PS5 exclusive, also available on PC.
Yes, and then that was one of the other things is once all the trailers dropped onto YouTube, if you scroll to the end where that it said that it was also going to be available on PC, it also made it clear that they were timed exclusives, not just exclusives.
Right.
And it said that they'll be available on other consoles at some point. So it's like there's some like fucking misdirections and red herrings going on. They didn't announce any news on the pre-orders, so after the show you had to find out the pre-orders are actually live tomorrow. And also games are $70 now. Like that's big news that people probably are interested in hearing.
Now, I'm guessing that if they're going to be selling the game at $70, we can see fewer built-in microtransactions and loot boxes. We'll see fewer things like EA trying to put actual ads for The Boys Season 2 in sports games. Because now that they've been able to recoup some of the cost of making these games, which they said, they justified all these additional expenses because games are so expensive to make. Now that we've raised the price, we can scale back on that other shit, right? Like that's what's going to happen, right? I
don't know what gave you that impression, Andy, but I can safely say that you're a goddamn fool. To Sony's credit, they have done a good job with microtransactions in the current generation.
Yes.
Never really had a problem with it in any of their games, but that's like this is sort of a term I'm looking for. Not a water cooler moment. Watershed moment. Watershed, that's the one. Woo, we got there.
Nice.
It's a watershed moment in the industry because as long as I've been alive, there's only been 2 other set price points for AAA games, and it's been $50 and then $60.
Mm-hmm.
And so now Sony's coming out and saying we're doing $70. Period. Like that's kind of big news. Like every other game is going to follow suit now. Every other game.
Now that they're going to be the ones that they get to get the temporary bad publicity of, oh, Sony's raising the prices on games, and everyone else is going to run $60 games now. That's just how much games cost now.
Yeah, it's just a fact of life. But yeah, I don't know why they're so averse to just like having these conversations with their consumers when they have like these wide audiences. Like it's gross when Ubisoft did it. It's less gross because Sony's a business that apparently isn't touching all of their employees, but
Yeah, and the things that they were avoiding weren't allegations of rampant abuse, but like
yeah.
specific release dates.
Yeah, so just to put that into context to be clear, but yeah,
Not to equate the two in any way.
No. But yeah, so there were definitely some highs and lows to the show. I think it was a pretty hype event. It's crazy that Final Fantasy 16 got announced today. Like that's a pretty big deal. Like there's not a Final Fantasy game every 2 years.
I mean, we did get one last year, or was it earlier this year?
Which one are you thinking of? Crystal Chronicles remaster?
Yeah, isn't that a main line? Isn't that everyone was hyped for?
Go to hell.
No, the Final Fantasy VII remake.
That I guess. Yeah, I mean it does use the full strength of the development teams at Square Enix. So I guess that's fair, but it's not a new Final Fantasy.
No, but I mean it very much is.
It is. It definitely is. It could have been Final Fantasy 16 if they had any balls and, wanted to create new characters.
Now that would have been an amazing move. Final Fantasy 16, and you start playing it, and it's Final Fantasy 7 remake.
Yeah.
Like they don't sell it that way. They don't make that clear at all. You just get in there and you're like, oh, Shinova again, huh? Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's and somehow it'd still be a less stupid title than Final Fantasy VII Remake.
I can't wait till you talk about that one.
Oh yeah, I have opinions. Coming soon to the Game Up Podcast. Brent's take on Final Fantasy VII Remake. Yeah, any other thoughts about the PlayStation show?
No, I mean I'm happy to see Oddworld franchise still living on. I know I'm one of 8 people that likes the Oddworld games.
Oh, stop it!
I like Oddworld games.
Okay,
Abe is a fun character. I like that world.
I assume you're being sarcastic.
I'm not. I'm not.
Oh.
I bought a Oddworld New and Tasty. I got them all. At least the ones that were available on PC.
All right.
It's a good series.
Oh. We should talk about the pricing of the consoles before we talk about
Oh,
Oddworld
right.
anymore.
Yeah, that's a bit of an important topic, yeah.
Yeah. So earlier, at some point last week, Xbox had sort of leaked all of their pricing for next gen, and it's $500 for the high-end console and $300 for the low-end console. Put that in perspective, apparently the Series X is capable of 8K, but you probably could expect 4K on average for most games. And the Series X is you can expect 2K essentially, which is 1440p. We're not going to get deep into the technical weeds just because we're not really like a high-tech podcast. Send us some Microsoft Duos, please.
Oh God, please.
But that's sort of the framework for how you can envision the next gen. Both consoles are capable of ray tracing and have SSDs in them, so we're expecting a lot faster load times finally. Because my God, I'm playing the Outer Worlds DLC on Xbox One X right now, and the load times are just unconscionably slow. Like, oh my God. But yeah, so along with this PlayStation event, we saw the price of the regular PS5, the one with the disc drive, I guess. And that comes in at $500 as well, the same price as the Series X. And then they have the digital, which comes in at $400, and that does not have a disc drive. Now, the interesting thing about this is that, by all accounts, the PS5 mainline compared to the Series X is an inferior console, power-wise.
Sure.
We can talk about exclusivity and games till blue in the face, but we're going to talk about hardware for a minute. It's inferior, but you get this $400 box that is suddenly inferior, but also not so much more inferior to the Series X, and it's coming in at $100 lower. What do you think the impact of this is going to be, sort of on how consumer buying patterns, coming this holiday season?
Yeah, I'm real curious about that. this is that kind of like drawing the line in the sand moment, I think. And like, because that's gonna draw a line between people who are buying based on wanting to be in a specific ecosystem and people who are buying based on actual dollars. And I've seen people on Twitter recently talking about how the whole grandma buying stuff argument when it comes to consoles and tech doesn't really happen anymore.
Yeah.
Like that, because of things like the fact that everything's just so expensive and people aren't buying gifts like that, especially during this economy, but also just like because of things like Amazon wish lists and being able to specifically put what you want there. Oh, well, I bought the Switch Lite and grandma bought me a game that's compatible with Switch, but not like that just doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
So, because I saw a lot of people making that argument for the Xbox, and like, oh, people aren't going to know what the hell they're buying and which one is which.
Yeah. The naming would be confusing for sure if like you weren't involved in games at all. If you didn't play any games, like there's an Xbox One, but there's Series X, and then there's an Xbox Series SS. So like it makes sense on paper, but what you're saying is that it's just not the reality of things.
And I think this is going to, more than the last or previous generations, kind of give a real feel for where people are in as far as ecosystem loyalty.
Yeah.
Having that only $100 price difference there is really going to, I don't know, test people's loyalty, which I hate saying because we're talking about consumer products for multi-billion-dollar corporations.
I mean,
but
the phone wars are still a thing, so
yeah. It's so I don't know that there are a ton of people who are really crossing the aisle anymore.
Yeah, I think I agree. Like, I think Sony has a stronger launch lineup, but I also am so invested in the Xbox ecosystem at this point that I can just plug in whatever new console that I buy, and I have all of my old games. And
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's like to some extent that also is going to exist on the new generation of PlayStation. So, is there a reason for PlayStation users to cross the aisle?
I think the only thing that Microsoft has that could really pull that, and that they've been pushing it like crazy, is the Game Pass. And they've been really selling that idea of Game Pass and then their console leasing scheme. I think that's what they have that could potentially sway people's purchasing decisions one way or another. I don't see it on PlayStation side. I don't see just $100 cheaper hardware being enough to do it, and I don't see a particular launch lineup being enough to do it either. It's good, and I think a launch lineup might get people who are going to buy a PS5 at some point to buy it sooner.
Yeah.
But I don't know that people are seeing the PS5 launch lineup and saying, "All right, fuck that Xbox. I'm buying a PlayStation now because of these 8 games that are coming out."
Yeah. Yeah, if we look purely at like the new generation of consumers that isn't super invested in, digital products on one console or one platform or another, you're seeing a $300 box that's going to be essentially not future proof, but will be relevant for the foreseeable future. And you can get that at $300, get 150 or 125 games with a subscription. It's going to be really interesting because like there is a certain fervor around PlayStation. Like people feel strongly about PlayStation every time they go on Twitter. It's
sure
kind of
do.
crazy. It's overwhelming. So I really like it. In history has always taught us on consoles that the cheaper console sells the most.
Right.
Like period. Doesn't matter launch lineup, like you said. Like it doesn't really impact things all that much. But I will be curious moving forward with this fervor around PlayStation, see if they can maintain that and justify $100 more than a Series S, and people see the value there. Or if people are like, $300 is my fucking budget, like, are you crazy? Like, I'm not spending $1 more.
Right, and I think
still get.
when you end up in that situation, you still have something like the Switch, which is also very it's like if you're looking at just people who want to play games and don't have an infinite, supply of money.
Yeah.
And I think Nintendo has done a pretty decent job in the last generation shedding its "this is for kid gamers" reputation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's gotten away from that quite a bit. So, I think that if you're in the family of we're buying a console and we have a limited amount of money to spend on it, I don't know that a disc driveless PlayStation is where you're going to end up, especially if they're vowing for $70 games.
Yeah. And that's a good point, too. It's like, essentially PlayStation is saying that they're willing to take a hit on consoles, but it's because you're just locked into their ecosystem and you have no other alternatives for buying games. That may scare off a lot of people that don't want to play $70 games, but they're willing to buy a used game for $10 more a week after or $10 less for at week after release or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to know how many people are out there like that, but
I'm gonna be fascinated to see what this does in the Christmas season. If with everything going on in the world and the economy, what their Christmas sales are going to look like.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting, especially because there's a good chance of shortages.
Yep.
There's a good chance new information will come out, and maybe all these consoles don't have the specs we think they do. Because there was also not really that much spec talk about the PlayStation since their hardware chat at I think it was DICE in March.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And they announced the disc-less PlayStation after that. So who the fuck knows nowadays? Fucking like 7 weeks from release too. This is crazy to me. But,
yeah, that I still can't believe. It doesn't feel like we're about to release a console or two.
Yeah, this year's been so weird and slow and fast, and yeah, I don't think anyone's ready for it. Like, I'm ready for something new to play with while I'm stuck inside for the rest of eternity. But otherwise, yeah, it doesn't feel like a typical console release year where like obviously you're more of a PC gamer, but usually it's like an all-consuming thing, like, oh my god, it's this many days away, and now it's like, well, it's just gonna occur to me and I will have this next generation of consoles before I know it.
I will notice it when I see people posting on Reddit about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, whereas previously, like, I was aware of the fact that the 360 was being released. I remember knowing people who were going to PS2 and PS3 launch events.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore.
Yeah, that was a big part of console releases growing up, man. I'm gonna miss that this year at least.
It's a different world now.
Yeah. R.I.P. grandmas.
You ready to talk some games?
Yes, I am, Andy.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about Space Thing game? Star Renegade.
You
Star
forgot
Renegade.
Yeah,
I got it.
You got there. Yeah, Star Renegades is a great little stylish roguelike indie turn-based RPG. Essentially, you're in this sort of futuristic space exploration era where these reality-bending mean people are taking over all realities. So they keep dominating one, go to the next one, go to the next one. So this sets up the roguelike experience. You play as a handful of renegades as you build your team up throughout your journey to defeat these baddies. But it never ends because it's a roguelike. So you'll play as the same heroes throughout every different reality. When you fail, you'll go into a new reality, and all your heroes will take on a slightly different color or hue, or their space suit will be pink instead of red. But
ooh,
yeah, fancy. So there are distinctions between runs, but for the most part, what you're playing is a very similar experience every time you do a run. Um, you'll start off on a planet, and there's 4 planets. And what you do is you enter each planet and you sort of walk around and breach into different segments of the land. The exploration is kind of weird, so that's why I'm having trouble explaining it. But the big ups that I give this game is the combat. It uses a timeline combat sort of layout, a lot like how I explained in Other Side, except it's a lot less clunky and nuanced. It's very simple and easy to understand. You have like a 60-second bar essentially, and what a lot of the combat is you trying to delay or stagger your enemies so that they either take their turns really late or they don't take their turns at all. Yeah, so each individual hero has their own interesting play styles. What you would see between heroes is maybe more damaging effects, maybe more debuffing effects. The biggest part of the combat, though, is this staggering effect that deals with the timeline. A lot of these heroes will use abilities that can stagger people for, 45 seconds, 30 seconds, etc., etc. I found those to be the most overpowered heroes in the game. Just because you could actually control combat a lot more, which gives way.
Just so I'm picturing it correctly, this is turn-based combat?
Yes, it's 100% turn-based. It's all based on the timeline.
So you've got a bunch of your guys and their guys are all in some order on this timeline, and as time passes and hits them, it's their turn to move?
Exactly.
Okay.
And it'll always be actively doing the math on where you are on the timeline, so you always know where you're going to fall. It's not like a surprise. Other Side did this where like enemies would go before you, but then they could do something that you couldn't plan around and duck you back to the end of the timeline, and you'd be like, oh fuck, well I guess I'm just dead now. In this, it'll tell you right up front. It's like, oh, you're not going to attack fast enough. They're going to attack you first and delay you. So the math is really solid in the combat. But yeah, the turn-based combat allows it to be really tight, really interesting. You get this sort of experience where it's a symphony of attacks, and it just, when you execute it all perfectly, it's just like the best feeling in the world. But again, all the combat seems to revolve around you staggering people, so you find out very early that the strongest heroes in the game is the ones with like the longest staggers. So I would always end up picking the same 3 heroes because they had the strongest stagger effects in the game to start. And throughout the game, you can pick up 2 more heroes with a maximum of party of 5.
I love that
later. Party 5. And yeah, eventually you'd build on to the staggering, and you would get support.
Now, is this one of those roguelikes where you're trying to defeat the big bad, and once you defeat the big bad, the game is over? Or are you always trying to, like a game like Binding of Isaac, where you just keep kind of replaying it over and over again? It doesn't matter how far you get, there is no real beating it? Versus something like Rogue Legacy, where you can win.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not like Rogue Legacy in that. It's sort of intended to be played indefinitely, but I don't think it executes on that promise very well. Essentially, since they've already established that you can just jump into another reality, so like, oh, we saved this reality, now we're going to another reality to save that one. It's like, well, why can't the baddies from that reality still come to this reality? It's a lot of weird nonsense, but yeah, you keep playing even after you beat the game. And honestly, once I beat the game the first time and could still use their same save profile and build onto what you've already built up, I didn't find much point to playing it a second time.
That's always the trouble with roguelikes, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like once you've summited the mountain, there's nothing left to find. just the empty hole in your soul.
How does it do? It's like between run progression? Is it unlocking new things to find during your run? Is it upgrading stats in between? What does it do?
There are no stat upgrades, and I think that's where I sort of found the biggest problem in the game. I would have liked to have seen more from a second playthrough, and not just I've already found my comp, I'm just gonna do this, but again. That's sort of what they expect of you, because after I had done I think it took me 4 full runs to beat the game. After the third full run, I had unlocked everything I needed to beat the game, and there's nothing more that was interesting to unlock after that. It's things like gear that drops, or enemy or allies that you can choose from the get-go. Stuff that's it.
That reminds me a lot of Into the Breach. Did you ever play that one?
No, I never got around to it.
Yeah, you didn't miss much, because I think it had that same issue of, like, once I beat it and had unlocked all, like, the 5 or 6 different comps you could have, it was like, oh, okay, well, that's that then.
Yeah, no, that it very much felt like that. Like I've beaten the game. Like, when I start again, I can't expect anything different. Honestly, when I had started another playthrough, I played a little bit, and I was like, this doesn't seem harder or anything, or like they've added anything, and that was when I stopped playing, was very shortly into my second quote-unquote playthrough.
See, that's disappointing to me. That's disappointing, because I like those kind of games can have that real great staying power. Like, I just finished my 3rd run through of Remnant from the Ashes. If you remember that one from last year.
Oh, I definitely do.
Yeah, I'm still playing that. Just
awesome.
Finished my 3rd playthrough, and it's still, and I just jump right back into it. I'm like, this is still a lot of fun. I said I'm still finding new stuff, and it does not sound like Space Bastards has that.
Space Bastards. No, Star Renegades doesn't have that.
That one neither, huh?
Yeah, no, that's definitely my biggest problem with the game. But I will say that the combat kept me very interested for a very long time, but that very long time expired the second that I beat it. Like, the second.
I guess that's not necessarily the worst thing. How long would you say it took to beat it?
Probably like 10 hours.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, each playthrough is kind of long, so like that's sort of de-incentivizing of playing a new playthrough just because I know how long it is. Like, it's not like Enter the Gungeon where it's like, oh, I'm probably gonna get duked in like within 15 minutes. So
right,
I'm just gonna do this real quick. No, you're committing to a very long run, and yeah, it only took 4 runs, so it's not a long game if you just do the first playthrough. The combat is a lot of fun though. I really enjoyed it. Especially because as your team grows, your enemies grow too. So by the time you get to the last planet, your combat looks a lot different.
I'm finding it hard to read whether or not you recommend this game.
I absolutely recommend the game. I have a lot of problems with it. I think if you purport yourself to be a roguelike experience, I expect there to be replayability. And I'm not necessarily a person that does do a lot of replaying of games, but in this case I wanted to replay it, and I wanted the game to give me a reason to do it, and it didn't. So my disappointment is that I loved the game, but I wanted more out of it, and it didn't provide it.
That's unfortunate. That's 100% what you want from a roguelike. Is it should, at least in my mind, it should take more than 4 attempts to beat, and you should want to keep playing even after you've beaten it, because this should feel like there's still more to explore, more comps to play with, more things to run into, something.
Like, what was the first thought you had when you beat Slay the Spire?
Oh yeah, it was like, oh my god, I have to do that again.
Yeah, I want to play this 100 more times.
I can't believe I actually beat this. My deck was so shithouse, I can't believe I succeeded. But now that I've won, I've got a better idea of how to play this better. And win faster, win more efficiently.
Yeah, that's all I expect from any roguelike. I'm not expecting that sort of level of addictiveness, but yeah, it didn't give me any cause. Now, there are things to unlock after you beat it. It just wasn't interesting. Like,
Mm.
you can unlock one new starting item, but you get really good ones really early on, so there's not really like any reason to go out of your way to do that. You can also get like special perks that you can also only activate one at a time of. So like, but the one I had was super buggy. So for example, there's 4 perks in the game, at least that I saw. Some might unlock later or whatever, but you can at nighttime you can pick up just random loot lying around, and so I foregoed that to get a perk where I would heal a little bit of armor in the night. I
Oh,
won't go
okay.
too much into the combat nuances because it's boring, but you don't heal between combat. You only heal after planets unless you manually heal. But I foregoed that and got the armor healing thing, and it just bugged out half the time. Like, it didn't heal the armor, so I was like, oh,
Oh,
okay. So
fun.
so that's another thing that I didn't feel like I had worked towards and unlocked that made me happy.
That's disappointing.
Yeah. Like I said, the combat itself is very, very, very satisfying. You'll get one good playthrough out of that, so I want everyone to sort of like put their value on that into how much they spend into the game, because I would say that I would recommend this game to most people, but at very different price points. Like, it's on Game Pass for PC. I would recommend it to anyone with Game Pass with Game Pass for PC. 100%. Just give it a try. It's a lot of fun. But I think it retails for $25. You may not get that value out of that. It's one playthrough. I mean, that really isn't that much money anymore. We're seeing $70 games nowadays, so in that context, it's a bargain at any amount of playtime.
You have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I didn't bother touching on how absolutely beautiful the game is too. That was one of the things that kept reeling me back in. It's the sort of like pixel art, but in the 3D environments, so there's a lot of like shadow effects in, even despite it being essentially a 2D game.
Oh, I like
So
those.
it's fucking beautiful. The combat arenas that you're in, the battlefields that each fight takes place in, vary from fight to fight depending on the locale on each of the 4 planets. You sometimes are fighting on these bridges, and sometimes you're fighting on like elevators, and sometimes you're fighting inside caves. Like, it's all gorgeous. Gorgeous. At least watch a trailer. Do me that. Do
Well,
me that. Just watch a trailer for this damn game.
you have done a good job, like giving me a very a roller coaster of thoughts, because I was thinking like I should try that game. I think I actually even have it installed, but haven't played it yet. And then I started listening. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm just gonna uninstall that game. And then at the end of this, I'm like, you know what? No, I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna
Gotcha,
try
I'm gonna
it.
try this. I may not have done a good enough job of conveying the first time experience, because it's really good the first time around. But if you're a roguelike person, if that's what you go into roguelikes looking for, is this reiterative experience and iterative and just being better and stronger and faster and whatever every single time you play, you're not going to get that, really not. But you'll master the game fairly quickly. I'm saying like 6-8 hours in, you'll have tried out most comps in the game, and then you'll pretty much have figured out what the winning comp is. By the time I had my 4th run, I was like, going into it, I was stupidly confident. I was like, I've seen everything this game can throw at me. There is a 0% chance I'm going to lose this run, and I was correct. But there are 3 heroes that I never unlocked, so there is more to the game that I don't know. So I will throw that in as a last second fucking caveat. So there are certain unlockables that I was not made privy to even after beating the game, and they probably do have special unlock requirements.
Okay. Sounds like a solid. It sounds like a solid recommendation.
Yeah, solid recommendation. Don't expect to play it more than once. It may not retain you. If it does, great. Beautiful game, great combat. That's the summary of the last 15 minutes of rambling. All right. Shall we talk about Hot Shot Racing?
Oh, Hot Shot Racing.
I got that right. Thank
You
God.
did. You did. It's somehow just as hard to remember as Space Bastards. Hot Shot Racing is the new racing game that I played this week. It's out for purchase on consoles, and you can buy it for currently $16, 20% off. Normally goes for $20. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. No,
Should I buy it?
I feel like it's rude. It's very presumptive of me to tell you whether or not a game is good. You should just try it. Or don't if it doesn't sound like something you'd like. Hot Shot Racing takes us back to a world of that early 2000s arcade racing of Ridge Racer, of Daytona Rally, Sega Rally and Daytona USA. Mix those two in my head. Virtual Racer, that polygonal, arcadey, amazing soundtrack, great announcer voice racing games from the early 2000s. And it is very much a love letter to those games. I played a lot of those in the arcade when I could get to an arcade in the early 2000s. I played some of them on my friend's Sega Saturn when I had a friend that had a Sega Saturn. They were great. Do you have experience with those games?
Oh my God, yeah. Cruising World and Cruising USA.
Cruising World and Cruising USA. This is that kind of wonderful racing where you've got a track that doesn't have secret pathways to take or anything like that. It's just racing. And there isn't a bunch of crazy shit you need to know about how to do it. There's just race. And if you want to do manual, you can, but you can do automatic, and you boost when your boost gauge is charged, and otherwise just race better and race better than you did before. And I like that. It's simple. It's honest. And that's what this is. This is a simple, honest, hardworking arcade racer that pulls itself up by its bootstraps. A God-fearing racing game that we can all get behind. It is but it is very much in that line. You have your 4 different Grand Prix that you can run. Each one has four courses in it. You have your time trial mode where you can go through each one or go through it in the mirrored world. It's got a couple of other game modes about going through checkpoints so you don't explode, or doing a cops and robbers thing, which it doesn't really feel like it's very well implemented. It's kind of trying to do like a Need for Speed Hot Pursuit thing, but
no Midtown racing.
Yeah, yes, no, it's nothing like that. It's very kind of clunky, and I don't like those modes. I just played Grand Prix over and over again, and I've got like 2 trophies left, and then I've beaten it because I'm garbage at these games, and I'm playing with a Xbox controller instead of a extremely loose racing wheel covered in pizza grease at the local arcade, like I should be. Like this game is meant to be played.
Fucking up.
Yeah. What was I saying? Oh yeah, boosting. You boost. That's the key to the game. That's key to your driving around and using your boosts effectively. You charge your 4 little boosts by either drifting or slipstreaming. Those are the only 2 ways to do it. No near misses or oncoming traffic or anything like that in a Burnout game. Just drift and slipstream to charge your boost. And standard tactics for these things apply. Get a nice boost start. Save up your boost gauge until the last couple of corners of the last lap and win. It's got great music. It's got a great announcer. The 8 characters you can play as are amazingly stereotypical. Sounds like it's offensive, and that's not really what it is. But
it's curdling that line a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, you've played it?
I did one race where I did the character select, and I was like, "Oh, this is weird."
Yeah, it's definitely a pastiche, we'll call it.
Generous, okay.
Of culturally insensitive games of the past. And you could say, if you're doing a parody of something, but you just do the thing that you're parodying, is that actually a parody, or are you just doing the thing? And you'd be
Yeah.
right in saying that. It's definitely not great the way that they've done their character select. It could have been a bit more inclusive and a little less on the nose with some of the the girl from Japan did not have to put on a robot racing helmet and be in a robot. Like, it's
Yeah.
The-
That's definitely the one that stood out to me. I was like, oh.
yeah, some of them,
Okay.
like the British guy just being kind of a foppish dandy who talks about how his dad owns everything, and like that. Okay, it's still lazy, it's still cheap, but it's a rich British guy, so I don't care as much, I guess, is what I'm saying. That's basically where I'm coming down on it.
I understand.
Yeah.
I will leave it at that.
Yeah, there's some really cool cars. Granted, there's only really 4 cars. There's balanced, drift focused, acceleration focused, or speed focused.
Which did you find worked best?
I really enjoyed acceleration focused. That worked best for me. That's probably not the best one, but I'm really bad at these games, so being able to get back on my feet very quickly is what allows me to even stay mildly competitive.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I played on some of the others, but I played a lot of, what was her name? I think it was Keiko? Was the Japanese girl's name?
I believe so.
I believe I played her drift-focused car the most, because I liked the way it looked. It looked like an old Z car. And
Yeah.
you can customize them up a little bit. That's pretty neat. The tracks that you race on are that 2000s era level of silliness. There's, your standard going on the beach, going in a city, but then there's also like going through dinosaur jungles, and one where you go in Las Vegas where you actually drive through a casino, like ones that feel very much reminiscent of your Cruisin' Worlds and Cruisin' Exoticas and Cruisin' USAs. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so do you play many other racing games? Did you find this transition hard? Was this more down your alley than traditional racing games?
This is the kind of racing game that I like. I really like arcade-style racers because I'm not very good at driving, and I don't understand how manual shifters work. So that helps a lot when I can play in automatic and just hold down that accelerate. So that transition from, like, I had also actually been recently playing more of Forza Horizon, and that was definitely a transition that I had to wrap my head around a little bit. Slightly different feel to the game than Forza, but overall I thought it did a good job recreating that arcade racer experience. It reminded me a lot of those older ones, or even something like power-ups aside, something like what was it, Blur or Split Second?
Oh yeah, Split Second did a lot of that. Yeah,
where you feel drifting feels effortless, and like your car weighs 8 pounds. It's very easy to just bounce back from anything. You ping off people like pinballs. There's no real damage. There's no real weight to anything you're doing.
Would you say this experience is closer to a Mario Kart than a Need for Speed, or the inverse of that?
Mario Kart's hard because Mario Kart always feels so slow. Mario Kart never feels fast to me. And I think part of it is how small you are compared to the width of the track you're on. Like, it makes it always feel like you're small and like you're not moving very fast.
Yeah, I can see.
Because you can always have like 4 or 5 people side by side at most points in any track. But it probably is closer to Mario Kart just because of how light and feathery and forgiving everything is. Whereas Need for Speed, and I haven't played the Need for Speed in a little while, but I remember them being a bit more demanding of you. And I mean, hell, you could actually like flip your car over in Need for Speed games. In this, I don't think I was ever able. No, not that I could remember. I've never been able to pull it off.
So it's no Daytona, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, yeah. There's no going off the track. There's no flipping your car over, and outside of the cops and robbers mode, there's no takedowns of any kind or anything like that. Or even car damage that I saw.
So I can almost not conceptualize playing this game without like a full arcade setup. Do you Do you think that it's would be better served in an arcade, or did you think that the experience was just fine on controller?
It definitely would feel more at home in an arcade if I had a real racing wheel. If I had a wheel racing wheel and I had a cheap ass plastic racing seat and one of those weird arcade shifters that like has 500 pounds of spring behind it, so it just like locks into place wherever you try to push it.
Yeah,
like the slightest touch and it just bam, you hear it like chunk right in there. Or the old was it the cruising games that just had high and low?
I believe so. Yeah, either cruising games or the Daytona games.
One of them just had the high and low, and that was it. This feels like it would work well with that. But yeah, it felt weird, or not weird. It would feel more at home in an arcade. I'd still enjoyed it on PC, but I know that like playing it with a controller on PC is about as far removed as this game probably was intended to be played or envisioned.
Yeah.
And that's also probably true with most racing games. The only thing I could be doing worse is doing like WASD controls.
That's how I played fucking Midtown in my middle school.
Yeah, that's how I played. I played early Need for Speeds, Midtown, Motocross Madness. If you remember that one.
Yeah, crazy.
I love Motocross
Crazy to
Madness.
think we ever dealt with that.
Yeah, God, I cannot believe I had the patience for that shit. Did you play it at all? You sound like you played at least one race.
I don't want to take away from your review with my experience. I'm gonna abstain from commenting entirely.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I think we can all infer that sounds like you had an even better experience than I did, and you just don't want to influence me in that way.
Possibly.
Now, and it should be said, I do not have the biggest experience with racing games. I played some in arcades and at friends' houses in the 2000s. I've dabbled here and there since then, mostly with arcade games that have come out. So stuff like Project Cars and Dirt. I don't know where I came up with the Drift. Dirt, things like that. What's the Ubisoft one? Where the Crew?
Club Nightmare. The Crew, that was it.
Club,
I'm thinking of Midnight Club.
Midnight Club. Oh, Gotham City Racing. I played a little bit of that on Dreamcast. if they still make those games.
I don't think so.
No.
They made the sequel to that, Gotham City Imposters.
Oh, yeah.
Very popular.
That was a hell of a pivot.
Shooter.
Worked for them, though. Good for them. Taking it a different way. Yeah, I didn't play any Midnight Club. Played some of that Gotham City Racing on Dreamcast. Like, I don't have the biggest pedigree for racing games, but this was definitely, as someone who had that nostalgia, it scratched an itch that I didn't really know I had for this specific art style and music style. So I liked it.
Cool.
Yeah,
cool. Recommendations, final thoughts?
I would recommend it to people who aren't going to secretly hate the game and not say anything about it on air. And I would recommend it to people who these kind of games exist as a fond memory for them. Where racing games, like the memories of these games exist as part of a whole package of being at a bowling alley birthday party or playing it in an arcade in a mall, like where all of that comes along with it. And it's not just, I am sitting and playing a racing game. I think that probably helps augment it quite a bit.
Okay.
That was my final thought.
Okay. I think we failed to rank last week's games. So we need to do.
Let's do that.
4 whole games today. What did we play last week?
Oh God.
We're both fired simultaneously.
No, I know I played something. What the fuck was it? What did I talk about? Did I have thoughts?
Okay, I'm pulling up SoundCloud.
Yeah, I'm trying to frantically pull up my podcast app.
Oh God, I'm not even logged in. This is my nightmare.
Fall Guys and Drake Hollow.
Oh, that's it. Oh, that's easy. Where would you put Fall Guys on the list?
I'd put Fall Guys at number 6 above Streets of Rage 4.
I would put Drake Hollow at number 10 above Totally Reliable Delivery Service, which means that only 2 games are below it. And then we do this week's.
Yes, I would take the game that I played, whose name I remember, and it's Hot Shot Racing. There you go. And I would put that at number 6 above Fall Guys. So that just got knocked down immediately.
Back to back. Wow, that's a good experience from Hot Shot.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Unlike some people who won't.
You'll never know if I like it.
I'll never know.
You'll never know. I am going to be pretty generous with Star Renegades, despite my ramblings about how it's not replayable at all, but really enjoyed that first time experience. I'm going to put it at number 4. Since we did 2 game rankings this week, want to just read off your list for us where it stands right now?
Sure. So I'll go from bottom to top. At the bottom, I've got Animal Crossing, because that's not really a game. And then after that, at number 12, I've got Elderborn, which I keep forgetting I actually played this year. Number 11 is Doom Eternal, which shouldn't have been made. Just no point. Number 10 was Microsoft Flight Simulator, which also isn't really a game. Number 9 is Super Hot, which is fine. Number 8 is Streets of Rage, another game I forgot that I played. Number 7 is Fall Guys, which you could hear about last week. Number 6 is Hot Shot Racing, which you can hear about 10 minutes ago. Number 5 is Deep Rock Galactic, which... I've been playing that since it was early access, so I feel like that shouldn't even be on this list because it came out, it feels like 8 years ago. Number 4 is Paper Mario the Origami King. I should get back and finish that game. Number 3 is Monster... Holy shit, I played Monster Train on this? Wow. Okay. Number 2 is Murder by Numbers. That was a great game. And number 1 is XCOM Chimera Squad, which I also forgot about. So, that is my list.
Re-looking at this, I kind of forget that you put Chimera Squad at number 1.
I remember really liking it.
Up there.
I got to go back to... Wow, that was only 6 months ago? God, this year is taking forever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. Wow, we're going to be wrapping up this year again pretty soon.
Oh, my God.
That's terrifying.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, from the bottom to the top, at 13, I got Bleeding Edge, which isn't worth mentioning at all. Number 12, Totally Reliable Delivery Service, which I wish I didn't remember that I played, but, I did. Drake Hollow, please listen to the last episode where you find out why it's my 3rd least favorite game of the year. Minecraft Dungeons, very forgettable, but also has touch controls now. It's touch controls now. It's kind of interesting to play on the cell phone, but it's still the same experience. Moving Out was a game I played at number 9. Ori and the Will of Wisps, very generously put in number 8. Other Side extremely generously put up that high, even though I'm still playing it. I'm a sycophant. I can't be helped. Just kill me. Carry On number 6. I'm not going to give any opinions on that.
Nope.
Deliver Us the Moon. I don't understand how it's been at number so high, but it's still at number 5. Oh my God,
Deliver Us the Moon.
Yeah. And then, the meat of the feast here, Star Renegades, Kakarot, Gears Tactics, and Desperados 3. The top 3 I'm pretty happy about. So the rest of this list, I'd take a few slaps. Oh, always good to catch up on the whole list because it's been a long year. It's been a long year.
Now, before we wrap things up here, I actually have a message from one of our sponsors that I'm going to just run by you real quick. Now that you're stuck at home all the time, isn't it about time you found a new creative hobby? It's been 6 months of quarantine. You should have picked up some kind of creative thing by now. But if you haven't, everyone's doing it. You open up Instagram and you see people knitting blankets, making sourdough bread, doing those pour paint where you pour paint on a thing and it looks really cool. I don't know how it works. I've watched like 20 videos. I don't know how that's supposed to, but it looks really cool. You know what I'm talking about, right? The pour paint things.
Pour paint. No,
you pour paint on a...
Poor people paint?
No, it's like pour with an O-U. Look it up, pour painting. Everyone's doing it. Everyone look up pour painting. Everyone from your freshman year biology lab partner to your first boss that you keep forgetting to unfollow is exploring their creative side to distract them from... And then I'm just gesturing to everything. Just to everything around us. If you're looking to stand out for the crowd, though, how about trying to make your own six-sided die? I bet you haven't seen anyone doing that on Instagram. All the materials you need can be ordered from your local craft store or online six-sided die crafting conglomerate. First, you'll need to make a mold of the dice that you want to copy using silicon, which is going to require you to already have a dice itself. But just stick with me here, it's still fun. The die itself will be made of resin that you inject into the mold, and I admit this sounds like a really boring craft, so don't even make your own. Just it's too much work. Just forget I ever mentioned it. Just instead of wasting your money and giving it all to that online conglomerate, why don't you play Slotsy? Slotsy is an exciting new twist in a classic dice game that you can download right now for free in the Google Play Store. You can arrange your dice to make various hands, earn power-ups, maybe even earn yourself a place on the Slotsy leaderboards. It's not the same thing as sharing photos of your poor paint pictures on social media, but what were you going to do with all those paintings anyways? You don't have that wall space, be honest. Play Slotsy.
Well, fuck the dice syndicates. That's all I have to say after that. They don't pay us.
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah. Any new features coming to Slotsy soon that you know of?
No, nothing. Same set of features. It's got dice. Okay. Everyone likes dice. Play dice.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Just don't make your own.
No. So please follow us on social media. We are Game Off Podcast. We post occasionally. We have hot takes that get posted and retweeted occasionally, and you should reply to those and engage with them, and tell us some games that you want us to play, and then we might play them.
I would be very interested to hear what people want us to play, because when I look at the views for the episodes, I never understand what draws people in.
They're just
some people like.
They're just hoping that we're going to have
games.
really hot takes on the latest Nintendo games, and we just don't.
Yeah, we just apparently don't like Animal Crossing. That's just how it goes. That was the most recent feedback I got for the podcast was, I can't believe Andy doesn't like Animal Crossing.
I can't believe people do, because it's not a game.
All right, follow us on Game Off Podcast on everything. I'm Arcadia, ARKEYDIA. Who the fuck are you?
Man, I'm as old as time itself. I am Solitalker on all social media. That's called Twitter. SOLITALK. Solitaire, but with talker at the end. I can't spell it right now. You'll figure it out. I'm also Andy.
Yeah. Just Google Andy, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you next time.